to coordinate this, so I'm really excited to be here. Do I have sharing permissions, Sheila? Okay.
You sure do.
All right. So, hi everyone. I am Kristen. I like to share before I get started that I have a corporate background. So I was in corporate for 15 years and I started tapping into my intuition through meditation back in 2017. And so I wasn't consciously intuitive, is what I would say, growing up throughout my life. And now I have really learned to master that connection and guide my life beyond the mind through intuition. I utilize human design, masculine, feminine energetics. Those are sort of my little rabbit holes that I love to go down. So today I'm going to share a little bit about human design. I have been in my experiment for about 8 years. Human design is referred to as an experiment because it's really all about the deconditioning process and understanding how our energy is designed to work and interact in the world. And so I'm actually going to do a little bit of a reading of Sheila's chart. So for those of you that know Sheila, I think it'd be fun to just see the resonance, both for Sheila and anyone here that knows her. And then it's 3:33, so hello, angels. Um, but basically, does anyone know human design like pretty well? Sort of, a little bit. Okay. If you pulled your chart, if you want to type in the chat your energy type, generator, reflector, manifestor, projector, your profile line. So 1, 3, 2, 4, whatever that looks like for you, and your authority if you have it. So emotional, sacral, splenic, mental, whatever that is for you. If you want to pop those in the chat, that'd be super fun to see. But just to give you a little bit of a background quickly, human design is a combination of astrology, the chakra system. So you'll see the chakras represented in the body graph when you get your chart, I Ching and Kabbalah. So it's a really fascinating system. And I always say, suck out the juice and spit out the pits. Take what resonates and leave the rest behind. Not every system will be for you, and always like trust yourself. You are your own guru. So these are just fun, fun tools for us to see and explore and learn about ourselves maybe in a little bit of a different way that we didn't think about. So um, human design came to me in my corporate years. I had a mentor work with me when I was very, very frustrated. Um, and she said to me, "Do you know your human design? I bet you're a projector." And sure enough, we pulled my chart and I'm a projector. So I'm a 1-3 emotional projector in human design. And to give you a little background, so there are 4 energy types. 70% of the world are generators. Generators are the worker bees, if you will. They're the builders and creators. They have their sacral defined, so they have a lot of energy to get things done in the world. What they need to focus on, though, is responding. So their strategy is to respond. So their aura is essentially like scanning their environment and waiting for something to respond to. What is exciting to them? What is lighting them up? What, if they're in a room of people, what person do I want to go up to and talk to at that time, right? So when they learn to follow that energy, they're really leaning into their alignment and their inner compass. 20% of the world are projectors. Projectors are the guides and leaders in the world. And so they have very penetrating auras. So projectors see deeply. There's no real surface level with projectors. They go deep, and oftentimes it's deeper than the person, or I'll say the person is ready to hear. And so projectors have to wait for the invitation. So in my corporate career, this was a lot of me, right? Sitting at a table full of executives and inviting in perspective that people weren't ready to hear. And then I felt unrecognized a lot because they just nobody's listening. And then an hour later, they're saying the same thing. And I'm like, what just happened? I said this an hour ago. We could have saved this time. And so it was just, I felt seen as a projector when I learned my human design. 9% of the world are manifestors. Manifestors are, I like to say, the creator. They're very creative. Manifestors are very much meant to see how to move the world forward, and to offer and to initiate changes that are meant to be in the world, but they're not meant to actually do the things. They're the initiators, and they're the only type whose aura initiates. The rest of us are sort of waiting to respond to something or waiting for the invitation. And then reflectors are 1% of the population. And so their whole chart is actually white. So you'll have all the little shapes in the chart, which I'll pull up Sheila's chart in a second here. The uh, reflectors are all white, which means that they're basically meant to receive energy. And so they're basically the mirrors in the world. So they are meant to receive a lot of energy and amplify the energy of the world around us and look for truth. And so they're really about human evolution, I would say. So this is going to be like a really fast intro, projector style. So I'm gonna jump around here a little bit, but I'm gonna pull up Sheila's chart. There's a lot of info about human design, but what I want to say to you is what I asked you to type in the chart or in the chat. Your energy type here, generator. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. Generator, your authority, which I'm going to speak to in a second here, and your strategy are the top 3 things to focus on when you're learning human design. Those top 3 things are the things to master first. Otherwise, it's a very big rabbit hole to get into. So let me check the chat real quick here. Let's see. All right, 5-2 sacral authority, sacral, 4-2 Manny-Gen. So Manny-Gens are a combination manifestor generator. Fun little fact to you, Jennifer, is if you have this guy, this 34 here in the sacral, all the way up to the 20 in the throat here, you're actually more manifestor than you are generator. If that line is fully colored in only. So just like this guy over here is fully colored in, connecting these two, oh my gosh, I forgot what the names of them are now. Centers. This full line connecting these two centers. See, this one, Sheila has just the 34. She doesn't have the 20. But if you have that full line, Jennifer, you're actually more manifestor than generator. And it's also because you have a throat, your throat is defined, connected to a motor. That's what makes you a Manny-Gen. Okay, 2-4 self-projected, projector, 1-3 emotional projector, Malamarie, same as me. 4-6 emotional generator, 2-4 emotional projectors. You attract a lot of projectors, Sheila. 4-1 emotional generator. All right, very cool, very cool. All right, so real quick on Sheila's chart, and then I'd like to open it up a little bit. So Sheila is a 4-1 emotional generator. And so when you look at her chart here, you can see astrology on the right and left-hand side here. You'll see representation of the planets and the gates. All these numbers here are the gates, which are represented in the chart within the centers. Where you are colored in, so these centers where you are colored in, you have consistent access to energy. Where you are not colored in, you're going to be more apt to conditioning. So just because you have coloring and you have consistent access to that energy doesn't mean that you won't need to decondition those spaces. But I'll go through really briefly the centers so you can at least look at without me doing like a full reading of all of your charts. If you have your chart up, I can share with you a little bit about what it means about you. So for Sheila, 4-1 emotional generator. So I already talked about the generator. As an emotional authority, so about 50% of the population are emotionals. So Sheila, what this means for you is that they will say in the human design world, it is best to wait 24 to 48 hours to make a decision. Now, that's because when we act emotionally, it might lead to regret, right? Even if we're really excited about someone, we meet someone and we commit to something, and then a couple days later, we're not interested at all. it's best for us to be grounded. So that's what I would say to you. So rather than thinking I need to wait to make my decisions all the time, if you know that you're grounded and making a decision, you can trust that decision. The other thing to note is with emotional. So about, I don't know if I said this, about 50% of the world are emotional authorities. So as an emotional, you have a second authority. So your second authority is the sacral. So any other generator who's not an emotional will be a sacral authority as well. So the sacral authority is this visceral response in our body. They call it the gut feeling. So it's basically, if I were to ask you, what do you want to eat for dinner? Do you want Thai food or Italian food or tacos? Whatever your body is like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's have tacos. My mouth is watering. You have this visceral experience in your body. That's that sacral response. And so your primary is going to be emotional, and then your secondary is going to be sacral. Your strategy is to respond. So as I mentioned, you're always sort of waiting for that, thing in your environment or idea that you want to respond to. And so in business, if you try to force yourself into action when you're not inspired or excited to do something, it will be misguided, because really you want to wait for that response in your body to tell you and guide you in that way. And one thing you can do to sort of fast forward that is have somebody bounce ideas off of you to see if, what are you excited about? And then that will sort of guide you. But it is a waiting game. And the other thing about generators, I always say that with the sacral. So generators are the only ones that have this sacral guide defined. All the other types will not have that. Many gens will too, because they're generators. But I always say that my generators will end up in a hospital before they realize that they're burnout. And that's because you have this sacral, you have this huge battery, and we live in a 70% sacral world. So we're tapping into all this energy around us thinking we need to be going, going, going. When in fact, if we're not listening to our own bodies and understanding, am I burnout? What does burnout feel like to me? Then you can end up in a hospital. So that's the biggest thing with sacral energy, is watching that burnout. As a 4-1, so your 4 line, so Sheila is she's a juxtaposition cross. So because your 4 is bigger, it's a bigger number than the second line. This is a rarer profile type. So a lot of profiles go in consecutive order. Because your first number is bigger than the second number, it means that your purpose here is to be more towards the collective and community, right? And so like you hosting this group and focused on bringing together spiritual alignment and business and just this larger focus, as opposed to being concerned with Sheila's journey, right? It's more like, well, how do the decisions that I make affect the collective? And so it's not that you won't ever care or look to yourself, but that you're always going to be more focused on how does this affect and move the community forward. And that's what you're meant to do. So there's only 30% of the population have that, and they are the ones who are here to build community evolution. Every generator has the same not self theme and signature, right? Every type has their own combination there. So the generators, when you feel frustration, it means that you're out of alignment. The not self theme means you're out of alignment. So generators, when you feel frustration, projectors, when you feel bitterness, that's all we had in the room, projectors and generators. The woman who was the Manny Gen, with the manifester is anger. That manifestor tendency is anger. So those specific emotions are like a red flag for us that we're out of alignment. And then the signature is how we're designed to be in alignment. And so we know as a generator, when you land in bed and your battery is depleted, you've exerted all that sacral energy and you feel satisfied with what you've done for the day, you're in alignment, right? Projectors, it's success. Manifestors, it's peace. And so whenever you feel that not self theme, whatever that is on your chart, ask yourself, take a step back and ask, what's out of alignment for me right now? And also, how can I feel more satisfied for it, whatever your signature is. How can I feel more success here? How can I feel more peace here? Okay. And so now I'm going to run through these centers here, and then we can open up for questions, maybe like the last 10 minutes. Okay. So here is the head center at the very top. Sheila's is open, so there's a slight difference. This is a little bit in the weeds, but I'm a projector, so why not? The centers that are completely white are actually open. The centers that are white and have a gate inside defined, but they're not fully colored in, are actually undefined. Where you're open or undefined, where you have this whiteness here, you take in energy and amplify it. Wherever you have color, it's actually like a bias, right? So when Sheila takes info in through her ajna here, she's going to have a bias with this particular gate. And so where she's open like this, or wherever you're open in your chart, these are the biggest things to look at for deconditioning. So after those top 3 that I gave you guys, this is a second recommendation I would give to you beyond your profile. Is always good to understand too, because it's like your personality. But when you get into the centers, understanding your openness is really important, because that's where your deconditioning is going to lie. The colored in definition is going to give you more of like your gift and how you show up in the world is more likely where you're in alignment and what people see and notice about you. Okay, so with an open head, it means that the head is a pressure center, a pressure to know. So because you have an open head, Sheila and Ajna, actually, you could have a tendency to get lost in your head with questions, over analyzing things. And so your biggest thing to think about when you have an open head here is, what questions do I actually care about, right? So when you're amplifying the energy of others, you want to be able to hone in on what is actually mine and what's not, so that you can bring more focus to that. That's how you bring this center into alignment when it's open. And then with the ajna here, this is your answer center. So the head asks the questions, the ajna answers. This is what I know to be true. This is what I believe. This is the answer to my question, right? And so again here, because you're undefined, it's going to mean that you might have a tendency to doubt yourself or want to bounce ideas off of other people, because you're not holding that certainty. There's more uncertainty that you're holding. Now, if you have these colored in at the top, to have the top center colored is rare, very rare. But many people have the ajna colored in. But the openness here that Sheila is showing is more open-minded. When you have colored in up here, you're going to be more closed-minded. So I have both of these defined. So I'm very certain about what I believe and think about things. And a lot of people are attracted to that certainty within me. Right? So that's like just again, like where you're colored, people are going to be more magnetized to you in those areas. Okay. The throat center. The throat center is the manifestation center. So this is the only center that all the rest of the centers are trying to come out through. And so it is our expression center. So when you have a defined throat, it's very important to be deliberate about what comes out of your mouth, because it will manifest. The other thing, if you have this colored in, is that you're going to be very deliberate about what you say. If you're going to give a presentation about something, you're going to want to know, like, these are the exact points I'm going to cover, etc. For me, I have an open throat. And so with an open throat, I had no plans for today. I just wanted to riff on the subject. And so here I am, and I'm very comfortable riffing on the subject. And with an open throat also, if you have this undefined, if this is not colored and if it's white, you're also going to feel the pressures of the room of what's not being said. So we're the ones that say the elephant in the room that nobody else will say. So I'm that person. So that's the throat here. This is the identity center, or G center. This is the I know who the fuck I am center. That's what this center is. And so I work with a lot of people on purpose, and I meet a lot of people who have this defined, like Sheila, and they'll still say to me, Kristen, I don't know who I am. And what I would say to you is you know who you're not. And so when you really learn how to unravel and just follow that, I know who I'm not, the I know who I am will become very clear to you and you'll have a direct path. If you have openness here, like me, I'm a completely open identity center. It means our purpose evolves. And so we will never have a very clear direction of like, this is exactly where I'm going to be in 5 years, 10 years, and this is how I'm going to get here. We will never have that. This is what I was challenged with in corporate. I was always seeking and I didn't understand. And our biggest work there is letting go of the path that everyone else thinks we need to be on and understand who we are and that our purpose evolves. The sacral we already spoke about, right? So the biggest thing here is watching that burnout energy and not overexerting yourself. My non-sacrals, projectors in the room, projectors, and if there's any reflectors, manifestors listening, our biggest thing is knowing that we live in a generator world. And so I was acting as a generator in corporate, working 60-hour weeks, and I was burnt out, not even understanding it. And so our biggest thing is knowing that we probably need more rest and snacks along throughout the day. Fasting is not our friend, not our friend. We need the food for energy. So that's the sacral center. The root, I gotta speed up here. This is my open throat here. Okay, the root, Sheila having an open root here. This is the other pressure center. This is the pressure to do, pressure to know at the head up here, pressure to do at the bottom with the root. With the root center being open, Sheila, it means that you're going to feel pressure to get things done when there's a timeline. You're going to feel more anxious when there's something to do and it's not done. Those of us who have this defined and colored in means that we work well under pressure. It means that we can procrastinate and get things done at the last minute. It's no big deal to us. So if you've ever identified yourself as a procrastinator, know that this is why. This is also important for parents, right? For the kids, when they're telling their kids, I need your shoes on in 5 minutes, nobody's moving. And the parent with the open root, like Sheila, is getting anxious. And why aren't you getting your shoes on? Why aren't you getting your shoes on? And then the kid last minute knows with the defined root, I'm going to have it done, mom, in 5 minutes. It's not a big deal. Like it's going to happen, right? So these are really important things to know in human design. To the left here is the spleen. This is the intuitive center. It's also based in fear and survival. When you have it defined, it means that you really have a good understanding of what it means to walk with fear. The spleen is all about walking with fear and trusting your intuition. If you're undefined here, it's going to mean that it doesn't mean that you're not intuitive, but it means that you might have a harder time discerning what's your intuition and what's someone else's intuition. And then also what fear is yours and what's not. So understanding that you're amplifying all the fear around you and you really need to hone in on what is actually my fear. I'll jump to the heart here real quick. The heart or ego center, Sheila's is open. Most of the population has this open. This is the motivation center. It's also the value and worth. So if you have this open, it means that you're going to tend to question your value and worth in the world, and you might not have consistent access to motivation. So when you have it, run with it. Run with that motivation when you have it, and give yourself some grace when you don't. And I also recommend that you create like a list of why you're valuable in the world, like what value do you bring to the world so that you can reference that and the times where you do question your value. It's always good to have someone with a defined heart like me, your friend, because I will tell you, you can charge whatever you want in the world because that's what you're worth, because that's the defined heart energy. And we come with some other stuff too. So yeah, there's the defined hearts. This is my favorite center to talk about. We don't have a lot of time to talk about it. The solar plexus emotional center. But what I would say to you is literally half and half. I told you half the population are emotionals, half are non-emotionals. If you don't have this colored in, you're considered non-emotional. These are the people that say to me, but I'm so emotional, Kristen. I don't understand why. And the reason being is that they amplify the emotions of those around them and they don't understand what's actually theirs and what's not. This is a huge issue in relationships. So if you can understand your partner's type here, it's really, really important. And then as emotionals, we are very deep feelers. And so when we experience any kind of emotion, it's not really a big deal to us. It's like we can even process emotions unconsciously. And the non-emotionals around us will think that we're like throwing off fireworks. There's so much emotional going on around. Oh, my hand raised. So it's a very, very interesting center. And I only left us a few minutes for questions, but I'm happy to take them. There was a lot. Sheila warned me about this, and I clearly didn't listen as well as I should have.
I'm sure there's something in our charts that will explain that perfectly. However, that was a lot of very valuable information, and I don't want anyone to feel rushed. We are a smaller group today, so why don't we say we'll have 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll jump into our open pitch time by 10 after. Does that feel reasonable? And because we want to have time for something for sure. And I'm happy to honor that. So if you have a question for Kristen, please feel free, just as Denai did, to raise your digital hand, or if you don't know how to do that, just wave madly with your real one. So go ahead, Denai.
Thank you. This was awesome, Kristen. I need you in my life because you have a defined heart center and I do not. But I was curious, based on what I know of some of these other approaches like astrology and such, is there like a high expression of a center and a low expression of a center based on what you know around that? I would want to go definement versus openness, but I'm curious.
Yeah. I would say where I described like the general expression of the centers is like a more aligned or unaligned expression, but in the gates specifically. So similar to gene keys, there's like a high expression and a shadow expression of each gate. In your top gates to understand within the centers, actually, if you look at the top right of your chart, you're conscious, the right side's conscious, the left side's unconscious. Your right, the top number there is your most important gift. You'll see it listed in your chart. That's your conscious sun gate. It represents about 70% of how you show up in the world. So if you can even just understand, excuse me, what is the expression of that gate, that can be really helpful. And then your incarnation cross is actually your conscious sun, earth, and unconscious sun and earth. So it's the top 4 numbers that make up your incarnation cross there.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
But there's a lot of things like your unconscious Mars can tell you what your money wounds are. So if you looked at like your gate expression and your unconscious Mars, like it's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah, we need to talk. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Denai. Let's go to Lisa, and then we'll look at the chat. Susan dropped some questions into the chat, but let's start with Lisa.
So much, Kristen. I was in another event and somebody was talking about how you debrief these as well. So I appreciate that. I'm curious, with this being like a birth chart, how do we interpret it, or how do we think about it, and how does anything change or what we use because of what we've lived through or our experiences? By this was our chart from birth, and then who it is we are now, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So unlike like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC that is really based on, your current, or even Strengths Finders, right? It's those particular assessments will change based on life events. But this and like your astrology birth chart will not, because it's all based on where the planets were and the expression of them when you were born. So did that answer your question?
Sure.
What part didn't I answer?
I don't think you did not answer it. I wasn't sure. I was curious about the takeaways of it. And then when like, and you made the comment before of some people say, I feel this, or I think this, or how's this saying? I was curious about the interpretation and the takeaways of it when we might feel, oh, I don't know if that's me. That's what
Oh,
I
gotcha.
kind of meant about the application of it, the interpretation and the application of it.
I would say so. I mean, because I'm also intuitive, when I read charts, I intuitively sense into like how things might come out in perhaps a business expression. But what I would say to you is when I was going through the centers and I would say like, you know, um, like a defined throat is very deliberate about what they want to say. And if you feel like, for example, very tempered in your expression and very closed off in your expression, but you have a defined throat, there might be deconditioning there for you to do. The other thing is that it may just not resonate with you. So that's what I always say to people, that if I'm explaining like the expression of this center and it doesn't resonate with you, either it just doesn't resonate or you have some deconditioning to do.
Right, right. Yeah. And the thing that I was thinking about was this is our initial like purpose and passion and how we come to the table. And sometimes those things are interrupted throughout our experiences. So it's awesome to look at this from what our true or initial centers are and personality and all of those things. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Kristen, do you want me to read the questions or do you want to look at the chat? What's easier for you?
I can. So Susan's questions.
Yeah.
What is the one to counter you're not self? Is your signature? I think it says sign. I think it says sign in the chart, but
Okay,
it's
yeah.
it means
Mhm.
signature.
And
What did you
so
say
how
about
does-
me?
How does
Oh.
that, how do you use that to counter the not self feeling or situation?
So if you're a generator and you're feeling frustration, you want to step back and ask, how am I out of alignment here? But that's just a general question anybody can ask when they feel they're not self. But if you want to use the counter, the signature, you would ask, how can I bring more satisfaction to this situation?
I see. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Welcome. And then what do the numbers mean, like 2, 4? So that's your profile. So that's like your personality type. And
Mhm.
so there are only 6 lines. So my twos are my hermits. So they're the ones that really need to step back and process information. They need to give themselves permission to hermit because it's the way that they process, but also they're the natural, which is really, really cool. So it means basically you're good at everything that you do. What I would say, if there's
Must be
anyone
nice.
anyone in the room that is a 2 line, that's the second number, you're going to have a tendency not to see that in yourself, but others will see it because your first line is conscious, your second is unconscious. And then the 4 they're the networkers, the connectors. They make connections between people, but also like in processes, they can make, sort of pull different ideas and make connections that are, unseemingly evident to other people.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's a very contradictory profile, right? If anyone is, if you're a 2-4 or anyone else is in here as a 2-4, right? You have the hermit and the networker, right? So it's like honoring both of those sides of you.
Kind of like being an extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or an ambivert. Yeah.
Ambivert. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Melanie.
So for the incarnation cross, is that a literal, are we supposed to interpret that as like why we are incarnated here? Is that what it means?
So in human design, it is designed to talk about your purpose. But for me, I have the right angle cross of consciousness 4, I think is mine. And mine is all about finding patterns, which I think is an expression of the things that I do, right? Like I'm as a coach, and when I do readings, I can very quickly identify patterns and things on top of the fact that I'm a projector, right? It's very projectory for me to do that. So it's like, to me, I haven't really like latched onto that is like, go read your incarnation cross and find your purpose. But yes, technically, people will say like that's alludes to your purpose. I think it's so much bigger than that, though.
Right. And then to follow up with the incarnation cross, sometimes there's angles, there's left, there's right angle. What is the difference with angles versus a juxtaposition?
That I don't know. I don't know the juxtaposition one. So right angle and left angle, I know, and that's just the numbers are where how the numbers fall, and whether you're individually focused or community focused. And I just briefly remembered what juxtaposition was, and then it escaped me. So I apologize. I don't know the answer to that.
It's all good. Thank you.
Any final questions?